From the very first moment the notion of posting videos on YouTube entered my mind some 2 or 3 years ago, the answer to the question of what to build my brand, for lack of a better word, around was answered by the idea of making versus matches. We've all seen these, and so we all know what they're about. However, in my case, I want to take it on from an in-game numerical perspective, not delving into obscure minutiae of lore or dabbling in the speculative merits of this feat or that exploit. No, I want to use hard numbers. I want to treat this as though these two characters were placed into a PvP arena with real human players behind their controls. Also, while I was writing this script, the channel passed over 500 subscribers, and I wasn't sure what I should do for that occasion, so consider this my first ever special thank you episode. And as this has proven to be one of the longest scripts I've ever done, that's not from a literal book, for the first time ever on this channel, you'll find timestamps to all the different sections down in the description. And now, with that whole preamble out of the way, let's get on with the business of the hour, shall we? As this is a new format for this channel, let me just quickly walk you through the rules of engagement, just so we're all on the same page. Rule 1. Only developer-intended gameplay features, mechanics, and styles are allowed. No cheats, exploits, hacks, or mods, unless they are explicitly endorsed by the developers. Meaning yes, for as much as I despise Bethesda's perniciously corporate attempts to monetize the only thing that makes any of their games worth half a piss, I will be acknowledging Creation Club content for this video, or at least I will be taking the stats and features into consideration. Rule 2. I will be assuming a 1-to-1 conversion ratio for all bars, meters, and stats, unless stated otherwise. So 1 GP equals 1 GP, 1 MP equals 1 MP, or the equivalent, 1 damage equals 1 damage, you get the idea. Rule 3. Both players will be assumed to be total masters of their own game, but entirely unfamiliar with their opponents. Rule 4. Both characters will be taken at their theoretically maxed potential, meaning that if there exists a legitimate way to raise their every stat and skill to level 9,000 without breaking the game, that's how they will enter the arena. Rule 5. All stats, effects, and mechanics will carry over from the combatant's original game and will apply to both combatants in equal measure. So if character A comes from a game where fire damage is a thing and character B doesn't, character B's player will just have to learn to live with that handicap. Likewise for all forms of resistances, buffs, immunities, and status effects like hunger, thirst, temperature, disease, panic, and so forth. Which means that, yes, hypothetically, the Dragonborn could, in this matchup, potentially turn Starkiller into a vampire or a werewolf, provided he could get him to stand still long enough. And Rule 6. No external power-ups, story-based bonus items or abilities unless the game lets you keep them, no NPC followers, and obviously no co-op stuff. Basically, if it can't be made a part of the character's standard loadout, it's illegal. And of course, all the standard rules and mechanics of PvP tournaments will apply. No pausing in menus, no exploits, no aimbots, etc. Right, now we know the how, let's move on to the who. Originally, I wanted to do the Dragonborn versus Ainz Ulgaun from the Overlord anime series. The problem with that was that Ainz has no real numbers to go off of, at least not that I could find. Sure, there's his character sheet, but apart from my inability to read Japanese, there's nothing to indicate the costs or effects or damage outputs of Ainz's spells. We know he has over 700 of them, but apart from a few which I could make educated guesses on, I have no idea how much mana each spell costs to cast, how long the effects last, what their DPS is, and so on. So I inevitably had to shelve that idea in favor of my second choice. Who, in case you somehow didn't get the memo by now, is the Dark Lord Starkiller from the Force Unleashed Ultimate Sith Edition. Basically, for those who don't know, when you beat the base game and choose the dark side ending, there's 3 extra DLC missions where you essentially take Darth Vader's place as the Emperor's pet war dog, hence the outfit change. Now, I chose this version of Starkiller because A, I think he just looks way cooler, and B, because the DLC gives all the max abilities and talents, so he's at his full power by default. Next up, the Dragonborn, aka the Dovahkiin, in the Dragon Tongue, specifically from Skyrim's Anniversary Edition, as it includes the base game in its original form, all 3 DLC expansion packs, Dawnguard, Dragonborn, and Hearthfire, as well as all Creation Club content. Also, just a couple quick notes before we start. I will be taking the Dragonborn as presented in the official imagery, i.e., a male Nord. Also, I will be giving them access to the whole of Skyrim's inventory, meaning all Daedric artifacts, spell tomes, scrolls, items, enchantments, shouts, poisons, potions, etc. will be at their disposal, though for obvious reasons I'll not be breaking down any exact build, but only be taking the maximum potential value for each stat, power, ability, etc. to the best of my own knowledge and from what I can find online. And as per the standard YouTuber handbook, this is all just my opinion. I'm not perfect. If I make a mistake or leave some important bit of information out, feel free to let me know just how stupid I am in the comments section. Also leave a like, subscribe, and all that jazz too while you're down there. Now, with all that out of the way, let us begin. Lord Starkiller versus the Dragonborn. In a royalty-free, no-holds-barred PvP battle for the ages, who would win? Let's find out. Right off the bat, there's a glaringly obvious disparity between the fighters' playstyles, specifically in regards to their vastly different mobility, owing to their game's genre gap. Being an RPG, Skyrim puts more emphasis on the world, where the Force Unleashed is pretty much an endless combat cycle. Where the former distributes elements like exploration, loot gathering, and role-play between combat encounters, the latter puts all its eggs into the proverbial basket labeled "Kill all the things." And as a consequence, the Dragonborn tends to be more steady and ponderous in his movement and handling, being generally encouraged to lean on strategy, their inventory, and all the various items and powers the game has to offer to win, rather than simply running in all guns blazing all the time, though that certainly can be an option if you know how to stack your stats. Meanwhile, the Force Unleashed generally encourages a more fast and loose approach to combat. In most cases, the player is motivated to dash and dodge and jump all about the arena, evading the enemy's attacks while ferreting out their patterns and weaknesses, then cycle through a rotating wheel of skills and powers until they find the most effective one or combo, and then aggressively spam until all the things on screen stop moving. Then rinse and repeat. And while, yes, the Dragonborn can do some lightning dashes with the whirlwind sprint shout, they can only use that at best once every 20 seconds unless you're either willing to pad your enchantment slots with cooldown reductions or use exploits, which are a no-go for today's challenge, whereas Starkiller just spams that shite like it's candy at Easter time. Plus he can also double jump and dash in mid-air, so there's really no contest in this duel when it comes to speed and agility. And on that note, to my mind, all other factors in this category are pretty much a wash. The Dragonborn can toggle the camera between first and third person, while Starkiller's is locked to the latter. But while this affords the Dovahkiin more flexibility while dungeon crawling, it offers no real advantage or disadvantage in an even-ground PvP arena. Starkiller can double jump and dash in mid-air, but the Dragonborns fought flying enemies before. Granted, a human-sized opponent had considerably more maneuverability than a dragon, but some extra verticality is hardly something the Dovahkiin can't cope with, at least not on its own. For those of you who don't know, Constitution refers to a character's base physical health and toughness, whereas Vitality just means their stamina. First off, the Dragonborn has a limited stamina pool, while Starkiller doesn't use stamina, though this only really limits the Dragonborn's ability to sprint, power attack, and block, and at his level it's a functional irrelevance. It's still a finite resource limitation he has, and his opponent doesn't. Far more significantly, however, if we count the ticks on the maxed-out Force Unleashed health meter, we'll see that the Dark Lord Starkiller only has 65 health and force power points, which means this fight could end in just 2 or 3 swings of an ebony dagger. Whereas by contrast, the Dragonborn starts out at level 1 with 100 health, magic, and stamina, and by the time they've reached level 252, which is when all their skills will be maxed, they could have up to 2,610 points in each category, though it's worth noting that they have no actual cap, so they are theoretically limitless, and given that health regen is a function of your total max HP, which is only limited by the game's ability to crunch the numbers. Go ahead. Ask me how I know. It is entirely possible, though not without exploits or inventing an IRL slow time spell, to make them functionally immune to damage. But even besides that, all 3 of their meters regenerate over time, even without potions, enchantments, or healing spells, while Starkiller can only replenish his health meter by picking up external health drops, which aren't allowed in my arena, or by killing enemies. So unless the Dragonborn decides to go full necromancer up in here, the Dark Lord's got the far more dangerous liability. So yeah, all points for this category go to the Dragonborn. This one's fairly straightforward. Starkiller doesn't wear armor. Well, technically he does, but all the options are purely cosmetic and don't offer any actual protection. Next, everyone and their brother's girlfriend's cat knows by now that the Dragonborn's armor rating is hard capped at 575, no matter what the numbers on the screen say. What that means in practical terms is that their physical damage resistance, as with all other resistances, is capped at 85%. However, we can do far better. You see, while all resistances in Skyrim are hard capped at 85%, magic absorption has no cap whatsoever. So, with a little bit more brazen wizardry, we can make the Dovahkiin utterly immune to magic, which comes with the handy side effect of also negating the effects of the shouts the Draugr Death Lords like to pummel you with, the effects of which include the disarming shout and the stagger effect of unrelenting force. And lest we forget, by our rules, force powers equal magic. Can you see where I'm going with this? If not, let me spell it out for you. The Dragonborn has the distinct potential to completely nullify the effects of nearly all the force powers of a character from a game titled The Force Unleashed. If that's not the textbook definition of a trump card, I don't know what is. But believe it or not, Starkiller's not out of this fight yet. After all, he still has a lightsaber. Now this is where we reach our first real gray area, at least as far as the raw numbers are concerned. From what I can gather from watching Force Unleashed gameplay footage, each swipe of the lightsaber does approximately 4 to 6 points of damage, while a lightsaber throw does around 10 to 12. For comparison, the lowest base damage weapon in Skyrim, the Iron Dagger, is 4. And before anyone says it, no, I'm not counting the fork. Of course, there's no damage cap, so trying to calculate the maximum output is futile. Plus, it's rendered academic if the Dragonborn can't actually hit Starkiller in the first place, which, given how quick and nimble the Dark Lord is, seems unlikely to me. I thus consider this category moot. This one's going to be quick and simple. Starkiller is many things, but, ironically for an assassin, sneaky is not one of them. Meanwhile, the Dragonborn can turn invisible, turn ethereal, which has the bonus effect of making them immune to all damage for up to 30 seconds, can employ the secret squatting technique, and has at least 3 separate methods to detect things trying to hide invisibly. And as for ranged combat, if Starkiller can autonomously deflect an entire platoon's worth of blaster fire, I'm pretty sure he'll have no issues dodging or blocking arrows. So once again, I consider this ground mutual. Considering I said the Dragonborn is all but immune to force powers, you'd think I wouldn't have much to add in this section. But let us not forget, not all of Starkiller's powers involve direct energy projection. He also has the ability to telekinetically hurl objects at his opponents, as well as just grab and whip said opponents across the arena. And yes, I believe this would bypass the absorption, since the vampiric grip spell in Skyrim does the exact same thing. And though the magic itself may not be able to do damage directly, that 85% physical damage resistance doesn't apply to fall damage. That said, the only other contributing factor I could see being relevant in this contest is the Force Dash attack, which uses the lightsaber as its primary attack vector and carries the same knockback effect as the Force Push. Also, it's worth noting that Starkiller can actively block or deflect direct energy attacks like fire, lightning, or force blasts. So he's not completely helpless in that department either. However, in my book, the Dragonborn still holds a definitive edge on account of his resistance being innate and passive. So another, albeit slightly technical, point to Dovahkiin. Once more, Starkiller misses out in this department due to his genre's more streamlined parameters. The only extras or power-ups he gets are external and therefore non-applicable in this contest, or are else wholly cosmetic. The Dragonborn, meanwhile, has quite a few unique items I think are of particularly volatile use in this context. Those are the Wabbajack, Maroon's Razor, the Sanguine Rose, and Jaren Root. If you've played Skyrim before, the benefits of most of these should be obvious to you. The Wabbajack has the chance to turn Starkiller into a chicken or a sweet roll with one hit. Of course, it could just as easily heal him or summon a Dreamora to fight alongside him, but I think we all know it's worth the risk. Mehrunes' razor, of course, has a 1% chance to instantly kill any enemy. However, it also shares the same base damage as an ebony dagger, meaning that by statistical probability alone, the fight will be over before the unique enchantment even has a chance to come into play. Add a little Jaren root to that and you've got a weapon that'll kill most ancient dragons in one clean hit. But having said that, as diving into melee slugging matches is hardly Starkiller's MO of choice, I doubt the Force Unleashed player will be stupid enough to hang around and let either thing happen. And due to his aforementioned mobility advantage, cornering him will be about as easy as herding a cat wearing a jetpack, which is where the Sanguine Rose comes into the picture. At the highest level, it summons a Dremora Valkainaz for 60 seconds. Combine this with the summoned Remora spell courtesy of the Twin Souls perk, and you have a pair of high-level bodyguards willing to kill, and more importantly, die, so you don't have to. Pair that with the summoned Durnavir Shout, which conjures an undead dragon, who in turn can summon up to 3 undead minions. You have the makings of a powerful army, and that's all to say nothing about the astounding array of staffs, potions, and poisons the Dragonborn can carry. Needless to say, this one's not really a contest. I'll admit, when I first started brainstorming this matchup, I really thought it'd be a completely one-sided throwdown for Starkiller, given his ability to take the high ground and make it call him daddy, and the more overtly flashy nature of his powers. However, the more I thought through it and crunched the numbers, it dawned on me that this is less like a Velociraptor fighting a hunter as it is a Velociraptor fighting a T-Rex. Is it physically impossible to scrape out a victory? No. Is it likely? Not unless the proverbial T-Rex has a heart attack and goes permanently AFK. While Starkiller does bring a colossal advantage in speed, agility, and maneuverability to the table, which then further translate into his dominating melee and ranged combat on account of his being so hard to hit, the Dragonborn has a wide margin for error on account of his having such a staggeringly big health pool and such hefty resistances. Remember, Starkiller only has around 65 GP, give or take. So just a couple hits from anything the late-game Dovahkiin has will end the fight, and his own DPS rate just isn't high enough to compensate. Can he whittle through the Dragonborn's health bar before the latter gets a few lucky hits in and finishes this fight? Possibly, but he would have to get lucky over and over and over again, while his opponent only needs to be lucky once or twice with the right weapon. So, my final verdict, and once again, this is just my own personal opinion, is that while it's not technically impossible for Lord Starkiller's player to pull a victory out of his hat, Dark Souls style, the Dragonborn simply has far too many ways to counter Starkiller's primary advantage and then proceed to instantly end this fight for me to consider that possibility anything other than a complete dark horse. I therefore declare the Dovahkiin the victor.